So that is basically this one in a nutshell, and the instructions on this are fairly adequate. They may be a little bit lacking in certain areas, but I was able to get the job pulled off without a big issue. And then moving into the saltwater generator, this has instructions in it. They're a little bit unclear in areas. The hookup is really simple. It's all toolless, so you don't need any tools to get it going on. It has information in here on how to maintain it, how to use it, a little description on how the copper and the chlorine is generated, and it came with enough fittings to set everything up. So that was quite nice. Now on they get into volumes, you know, on how much pool salt you need to add based on their pools. Well, my pool is not listed in this chart, which presented me with a little mathematical problem I had to figure out. So basically what I did was just take one of the figures on the same style of pool, the metal frame pool, and it tells you how many pounds of salt to add. For this example, they're saying put in 80 pounds of salt for 3,200 gallons of water. Well, like I said, I only have about 1,700 gallons, so I figured out the quantity of pounds per gallons by doing some simple division, and then multiplied that number by my gallons, and that told me what I needed, and I was somewhere in the 40-pound range. So I just dumped the whole bag, let it dissolve, and then I took it to the pool store the next day, and it turns out I got the parts per million right in the middle of the recommended chart, so I got lucky there. And for $6.54 to put enough salt in the pool to generate chlorine for a season, that's a pretty good cost if you ask me. Now, using this saltwater generator, I've only had it running for a couple of days, and it's kind of hard to get it dialed in exactly the way you need it. The first thing you're going to want to do is, it comes with some copper concentration test strips, and you're going to want to test your copper concentration, and you want it between 0.1 and 0.2 parts per million. And if it is below that range, you're supposed to move on to the boost cycle. And the boost cycle creates copper ions and puts them into the water, and there's a copper electrode in there to do that. And it runs at 4 times the amount of hours that you have programmed in the unit. So by their example, if you have your generator set to run 2 hours a day and you boost it, it's going to run for 8 hours total. So since this requires the pump to be running, you need to make sure that your pump is running in that time frame. So if you're typically running it for 1 hour and you have your pump set at 2 hours, because they say to run the pump 1 hour after the generator shuts off, you're going to want to up those hours or manually turn the pump on so it encompasses that. And if your pump shuts off for any reason, it will throw a water flow alarm and you'll have to start all over. And that is another issue I do have, is trying to get everything synced up correctly. I just don't quite have it right yet. For example, I want to do 1 hour of saltwater generation and chlorine generation, so I need my pump to run it too. So what I do is I start the pump, and the pump has a timer and it's set to run 2 hours, and I wait about 10 minutes, and then I go ahead and program this, and it starts the generation. It shuts off, and then the pump shuts off about an hour later. That's what they're recommending. Well, it's been so hot here, it's about 110 degrees here right now, so I'm having trouble keeping chlorine in it. I generate it at night, and you know, I go out there somewhere around noon and it's already burned off. So I'm going to try 2 hours tonight with a 4-hour pump run time, and that's another one of my complaints, is if you don't have, if you want to run this for 2 hours and you only want to run your pump for 3, well, there's not an option for 3 on the saltwater pump. I'm sorry, the sand filter. So it's going to run an extra hour beyond that just to do 2 hours of chlorination. So other than that, it's not that bad. Another complaint I have, when it goes into standby mode, you can't just wake it up and have it generate chlorine if you have a demand for it during the day. You have to turn the switch off, turn it back on, reprogram it, run it for an hour, however long you want to, then it goes into standby. Well, that screws up, you know, your whole time setting, because it starts its clock whenever you set the timer on it, and it'll run 24 hours later from the point where you started it. I didn't really like that, but what do you expect? You know, the cost of these are so low. They do work. I just hadn't quite got it dialed in yet. Again, I cannot give any recommendations on how to actually make things work, or check out the water quality, or if you have a problem with pH or alkalinity, or you know, you're having a problem with algae. Consult a professional, because I'm certainly not one. Other than that, it seems to be a fairly simple system. Now, as far as I can tell you about getting in it, you know, I had been chlorinating it for a couple of weeks because I didn't have this system, and of course, you know, it's a chlorinated pool. Well, I got this thing set up and finally got the chlorine adjusted properly in it, and got in the pool, and I'm absolutely amazed on how nice the water feels. It just softens your skin. It's light. There's a very, very faint taste of salt, because I have the salt content correct, and it's not unbearable, and it's a lot better than chemical chlorines, in my opinion, as far as taste if you get some in your mouth. As well as when I get out, I don't feel all that sticky. I don't feel like I have to immediately jump in the shower and get all the chlorine off of me. It's actually quite pleasant, and I enjoy it so far. And it actually, in my opinion, is a little easier to deal with, even though you do have to maintain some parts of it. You know, you do have to do that, but it's a little more friendly to me than really having to pay utter attention to your chemistry every day and all day.